It's been a little while, ladies and gents, but I am finally back to address even more of your hottest fairy tale takes. The first video was extremely fun to make and got some pretty good conversation going in the comments, so let's see if we can keep those good convos going and hopefully not have these takes and my reactions to them divide this space into utter chaos. Starting off with some adequate heat, the first take comes from @MrXstreams, and they say that Alvarez is a good arc. Alvarez has, just from some slight observation, always been a pretty controversial arc ever since its inception and conclusion for the fairy tale fandom. Those who don't like it are usually upset by the supposed inconsistent writing and/or the anime's rather lackluster portrayal of its contents. Personally, though, I tend to find myself somewhere in the middle of the conversation when it comes to this subject. I don't really hold any contempt for it from a writing perspective because, for the most part, I thoroughly enjoyed my time with it. However, since my main consumption of the arc was through the anime, I just simply can't bring myself to say that from a visual standpoint it is a quote-unquote good arc. But I will say overall, it's at the very least serviceable. A solid 6 out of 10, maybe even 7 if I'm feeling like an Acnologia fanboy that day. So 7 out of 10. Anyway, up next we have a take from @Wardened2, and they say that Gildarts is still the strongest wizard. If we are talking currently alive and excluding the dragon gods, then I absolutely agree. I know recently in the Doggermog arc it was noted by Loxus that a wizard from Diablos named Kirin was comparable to Gildarts in his eyes. However, based off of his performance during their bout, I have to say that that was probably just pure propaganda. I firmly believe that Gildarts is not only still the strongest wizard in Fairy Tail, but he also, if ever reintroduced into the story, will decimate basically anyone that isn't one of those previously mentioned dragon gods. Although, if he were to tussle with one of them, it would most certainly be a battle for the ages. Up next, though, we have a hot take from Midnight Fox 89 over on Twitter. They threw their hat into the ring and said, "The only thing that I can think of is that Fairy Tail fights need to be longer. I never feel like the characters are actually struggling to beat a tough opponent, and likewise, they get out against tough opponents, but then the opponents say, for example Irene, she's called the Scarlet Despair, but we never see how exactly she earned that name. What about her is so intimidating and scary to earn that moniker? Also, currently the dragon gods, they don't really feel all that strong, deadly, or dangerous." As I said before, a bit of a long one here, but basically this person is saying that the fights in Fairy Tail need to be longer, and that some powerhouses in the series don't really feel like they are, well, that. In response to the first part, I 100% agree. It wasn't really a problem for me with the original Fairy Tail series. However, one of my longest standing criticisms of the sequel manga has been that the fights have consistently been way too short. And it's not like said fights are against some weak underlings or jobbers. No, time and time again, opponents who actually have some standings in the story get defeated so quickly that they barely leave an impact, if any at all. And this point kind of leads into the second part of Midnight Fox's take. When you have the opposition get taken out in such a manner, it makes the readers take that opposition a whole hell of a lot less serious. So yeah, for the most part I agree with a lot of this take, and I hope that Mashima takes steps in the future to correct these ailments. Moving right along, the next take is from @Kurokautama, I think that's how you say it, who says Viernes is the lamest villain in the entire manga. Now, I don't know about the entire manga because I'm sure you could make a case for others, but I cannot argue that he isn't at least in the top 5 for that category. Because for a dragon god that had so much mystery built up around them, it certainly came as a surprise to me, and I'm sure many others, that when he was eventually revealed, his character was uber generic and wholly uninteresting. And that's without including the fact that the fight against him in his dragon form barely lasted like 2 chapters. Although, to rail on him in this manner isn't entirely fair, At least not anymore, considering that he came back and fought against Gray in a pretty sick battle. His character was still a nothing burger in my opinion, but at least he was boring and cool for a moment instead of just the former. Anyways, this next hot take is actually one if I'd read about a year ago, I'd be in total agreement with. However, with the story being where it is currently, I'm a bit apprehensive. But it's from @5796, and they say, Ignil bullies the dragon gods in his prime. He has overall the best combat we have seen from any dragon. I held this belief for the majority of 100 Years Quest. But after a lot of contemplation, I had to walk away from that line of thinking. Ignil definitely does not bully every single dragon god, but he still stomps regardless, and I will not hear otherwise. Moving on. To hot take number 6, I think. I don't know, it's from @Masadrame1650. Again, I think. And this person says, Natsu and Zeref's final fight was horrible. And I'm not even talking about the animation. Zeref vs END was hyped for the longest, just for Hero to do nothing with it. With all the hacks and abilities Zeref had, he resorted to being a brawler. Zeref gained absolute power and did next to nothing with it. His whole conclusion felt so sped up. Unlike the last one, this one I am in complete and total harmony with. Hiro Mashima, I do kinda believe, dropped the ball here with Zeref's quote-unquote ultimate form, not only due to the fact that because he had gained that power, which then allowed him to achieve his greatest desire, and he just gave up on that to fight his brother again, but also, like Must points out here, having the final battle between Zeref and Natsu take place with the main protagonist staying in base the entire time is just strange. No Dragon Force, no END, no Lightning Flame Dragon mode, and before anybody inevitably goes into the comments and says that, oh, the scene just wouldn't allow for something like that, I say, just write the scene differently then. But all that aside, for the final hot take of the video, here's mans-nq1hk who says, Ignia is a better villain than Acnologia. Ignia, in my opinion, is a very middle-of-the-road fairy tale villain. He has some incredible aura moments, but so far, what has he really done in the story? What truly long-lasting impact has he had on the cast? What emotion other than some hype does he bring out of you when he's on the page or screen? I'm probably going to dedicate some time to making a full-length video on what I'd like to see from this villain, but as of right now, at the time that I'm making this, it's a hell no from me. With all that said, that's going to do it for me, so I hope that you all enjoyed. If you did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe with the notifications on, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace out, everybody!